Well, good morning, and let me get some microphone here. How about that? I want you to be able to hear me. Good morning. My name is Oliver Blue, and welcome to day 14 of the workbook lesson for students in the Course of Miracles. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy that I am here with you. And so let's get started with today's lesson. Before we get started, I just want to remind us that uh, this entire path called A Course in Miracles is not the only path. It's just one of 1,000 paths. And when we say path, what we're talking about is it is a way to return home. All paths leads to home. And so if you find yourself on this path that is called A Course in Miracles, it's because this path is suited for you. All paths are designed to wake us up from the dream of separation, from the dream of being a prodigal, from the dream of having left home and finding our way back. And so we find ourselves in a world, a meaningless world, and it is our goal to find our way back to our original state of mind, state of being, our original natural inheritance, which is love's presence. In fact, the Course in Miracles is aimed at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. Love's presence is equal to saying God or heaven or reality. So it can be read this way. A Course in Miracles aim is at removing the blocks to the awareness of heaven, the awareness of love's presence, of the awareness of what is real, to the awareness of your reality, which is your natural inheritance. Our natural inheritance is love's presence. Our natural inheritance is love's presence, or God, or heaven, or eternity. All these words are synonymous to mean that which is real. Okay, a return to love, a return to home, a return to our original state. Last week, the idea of the ego was introduced in our studies. And the ego is no more than a system of thought that opposes the thoughts of God or the thoughts of heaven or the thoughts of reality. And its goal is to keep the dream going by posing itself as the truth and an alternative to a fearful, vengeful, terrifying God. All this story is part of the ego's um, um, goal, which is to keep the lie going. Okay? And we know how that idea of keeping the lie going, we know how that works even in today's society. But when we were introduced to the ego idea last lesson 13, it says that the ego is idolatry. meaning that we're worshiping nothing, worshiping that which is, we're giving our allegiance to nothing, to an illusion. That's what the ego is. It is the sign of limited, it's the sign of limitation and a separated self. It's, so this whole idea of us being born in this limited body, surrounded by all the fears of the world, that's an ego idea. Because in our natural state, we have no limitation. There is no fear. There's only love, love's presence. So this idea of God creating this separate self and all these separate selves and putting them in an environment that is filled with terror and birth and death and suffering is all a idea that is opposed to love's presence. Where did it come from? Well, as we continue in these studies, all these questions will be answered for you and for me. It's just a tiny, the course describes it as a tiny mad idea that one can separate from its source. That's the question. Can one separate from its source? Or if the source is pure light, can the source create anything but pure light? If the source is an apple seed, can an apple seed create anything but an apple? Okay. If water is sweet, can water be anything else but sweet? Can it be changed? Can it be altered? Remember, we talked at the very beginning that which is real cannot be changed. It can't be altered. It can be unrecognized, but it can't be changed. And so this whole idea of an ego is based on the idea that which is real can be changed. And so it breaks up the whole foundation of reality. But in reality, it's unalterable, it's unchangeable. It merely is. And so this idea came into of the awareness of something. We don't know what we're not there yet, but we'll get there. And said, no, reality is not real. Oneness is not real. Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall and had a great fall and fell into a billion pieces, and it can't be put back together again. That's the whole idea of the ego. And so that reality can be just broken up into billions of pieces. That one can be broken up to billions and billions of pieces. The idea that love present can be broken up into billion and billion of pieces. That there can be an exception. That there can be this and that. In the reality, there's only this. So the idea of the ego thought system is insane. It's an insane thought system. And it has turned reality inside out. Thus, we enter into the world with this inside out idea being perpetrated in this world system and taught and conditioned in all of us once we get here, only to have eternity within our self crying out for the expression of that which is real, that is true. And again, this idea of the ego is that strength is weakness, that love is fearful, and that life is really death. And that what opposes love's presence alone is true. That's the whole thought system of separation. And so this is insane. It's an upside down orientation. Fear is its ammo. Terror guards its thoughts, and the dream of separation is proof that it is real. That's the whole thought system of the ego. And we get so conditioned and so um, we get so convinced about that is what is real. And then we try to live this life or live in this world. And thus we see the tragedy, we see the way that we see what we have made based on this thought system of the ego versus what love's present or God has created. You see, the nature of love is that it extends itself, which is love. Creation extends itself, which is love. But the ego thought system, it it doesn't extend. Okay, so what does not extend is not creation. And so what does not extend is not real. It makes up a lie. And we buy into the lie. And we live a life of the lie. And that's why we experience the fear, the anxiety. That's why we see, that's why we see through the eyes of that ego, and we see a fearful world. But now the course comes along and says, nothing that you see mean anything. And it says, you have given everything the meaning that it means to you. You have given it, okay? Love present hasn't, but we have given it through the lens of the ego. It says we don't understand anything that we see, and that our thoughts do not mean anything. And that we are never upset for the reason we are, because all this is coming from an ego point of view, from a false point of view. And so that's why the world seems meaningless. And we don't understand it, and we don't see anything because it's not real. All of it's based on an illusionary thought system that was made up, what not extended and created, but was made up. I am upset because I see something that's not there. I see only the past. My mind is preoccupied with the past. I see nothing as it is now. My thoughts do not mean anything. My meaningless thoughts is showing me a meaningless world. I am upset because I see a meaningless world. And yesterday's lesson was a meaningless world engenders fear. So you see how critical these first few lessons in A Course in Miracles. We've got 365 of them. We've only on day 14, but you see how critical they are in the process of thought reversal. We need to undo the way we think now. Why? Because it's based on an ego thought system of fear and terror and separation that is totally opposed to love's presence, totally opposed to truth. Just imagine this. When the man that we call Jesus entered into the world 2022, 23 years ago, he entered into a illusionary world that man had made through this thought system of fear. And so here he comes entering in. And it didn't take him long, even as a child, he discovered that he was full of light. He embraced only that which was real, and that was his relationship with the Creator God. So he embraced truth early. He didn't get caught up in this thought system, this ego thought system. And so he walked in this world and saw the plight of man. That man was totally bamboozled by this ego thought system of separation and was completely into idol worship. And for 30 something years, he never bought into any of the illusions. Thus, he was a course in miracles. He was a light. He was a pointer to point us back to the truth, to point us back to the way home. That's what his life represented. Okay. So now here we are, here you are, 2022, discovering that our thoughts and our perceptions were based on, in many cases, this idea of idolatry or illusion, or this belief in separation, in terror and death, and that the world has been turned inside out with this thought system. And most humans operate on this thought system. All our systems are built on this thought system of the ego. And now here we are entering into the world, and we are undoing the way we think now so that we can embrace the thoughts of God, the mind of Christ. For what purpose? That we may, like Jesus said, you are the light of the world, just like I was the light of the world during my incarnation. Not to continue to blah, 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 blah. Not to continue to perpetuate the ego idea, but to be a pointer to that which is real, to be the light of the world, to be a symbol of truth, to stand for that which is real, to be a healer of the world, to be a savior of the world. So when you look at it from that perspective, it takes all the religion out of it, all this idea that, we're here to just to pay homage or to worship or to pay homage to a God, in many cases that we're afraid of. So it's false homage in most cases. But we're not here for that. We're on an assignment. And that assignment is, first of all, to accept the truth for ourselves, and then to go out into the world and be that light in darkness so others can get on this path or a path to returning home, which they never left. So, to get into today's lesson, which I've already been into it, but I needed to preface that. Okay? Because remember, the course can be summed up in these three statements. Nothing real can be threatened. Love's presence can't be threatened. Heaven can't be threatened. God can't be threatened. You can't be threatened. Your reality cannot be threatened. That means it can't be altered, can't be changed. It can be unrecognized by embracing another thought system, but it doesn't change the reality of our true nature. It doesn't change the reality of your true identity. It just allows you to be on the stage of life playing a role, playing as an actor in a movie of separation. You can do that. It'd be painful and fearful and suffering and insane. Why would you do that when you are love's presence, where there is happiness and joy and peace? So nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. The ego doesn't really exist in reality. In traditional religions, the idea of a devil and hell and separation and eternity and hell and all that, that's part of the ego's thought system. It's an illusion. It's unreal. It doesn't exist. It can only exist in your mind if you believe that. And that will only bring pain and suffering and a looking forward of terror. And all that's done to keep you in the belief, to keep the lie going. Why do you think this whole idea in our country right now is about keeping the lie going? When it keeps the lie going, it keeps people in what? In deception. So nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. The book of man's not real. The devil not real. Hell's not real. Your eternal. It's not real that you separated from God. God's not mad at you. It's not real that God created the fearful world that you see. Remember, love can only extend what it is. So if you see terror and fear in the world, that's an indication that it's not an extension of love. It's it is it's what it is mad ideas that we created by defining this world through the thought system of the ego. So we did it to ourselves. We did it to ourselves. So if we did it to ourselves, it requires us to undo it. So that's why we're going through these 365 lessons to undo the thought system of fear and separation. That's where this anxiety in your life comes from. Believing in this. It's coming through your thoughts. And your thoughts is creating the way that we see. And so we are giving meaning to it that's based on fear and separation. Can't you see we're doing it to ourselves? There's nothing to be afraid of. There is no death. There's only love's presence. There's only God. There's only heaven. There's only Jesus. There's only Buddha. There's only whatever your idea of perfection is and completeness and wholeness. It doesn't matter what you name it. One name don't make it. The names don't make it real. It's real because it is. But we get caught up in all the labels, and then now that's just another way to separate us, to cause us to fight one another, to cause us to send some to say some going to heaven and some ain't. All this we're doing. God ain't got nothing to do with any of this. Love's presence has nothing to do with any of this insanity, this foolishness. We are one. I'm on my soapbox this morning. So taking all what I've just said, bring it into lesson 14 is going to help make sense of what it's saying. It says that God, or love's presence, okay, love's presence or God did not create a meaningless world. Why? Because love presence, that's all it is. And love's presence is love. And love can only extend what it is, and it cannot extend meaningless. It can only extend meaningful because love's presence is meaningful. So God did not create a meaningless world. If this world exists and it's a meaningless world based on our perception and our thoughts, then that means that love presence did not create that. It did not extend that. That's not the offering. There's another idea that made that. And that idea, we just label it the ego. Or you can, in your word, if you want to label it the devil, that's fine. It's not real. Neither of the ideas is real. You can call it what you want to. You can call it hate. Hate. Okay. You call it hate. Hate made a meaningless world and influenced me to think that way. So love's present did not create a meaningless world. This idea for today, of course, is the reason why a meaningless world is impossible. A meaningless world is impossible because love didn't create it. So if love didn't create it, it doesn't exist. So the whole idea is why a meaningless world is impossible. Only what is possible is what God creates. What God or love present did not create does not exist. Well, where did it come from? You may ask yourself the question. We'll get to that. And everything that does not exist exists as he created it. Read it again. And everything that does exist as he created it. Love presence can only extend love. And love exists, and it only exists as it was created. It can't be changed or altered. Remember, we're dealing with that which is real here. The world you see has nothing to do with reality. It's not real. The world you see through the eyes of an insane thought of separation, which we call the ego, it's not real. It has nothing to do with reality. It is your own making, and it does not exist. It is your own making. I know that some of these ideas that the course is introducing to us are startling. Some are hard to believe. Based on what? Based on our prior conditioning. And that's what happened when light meets darkness. It's totally opposite. Remember, we said that the ego thought system is a total reversal of that which is real. It's an upside down orientation. That's what it says. Truth has been turned upside down. Humpty Dumpty has fallen and broken into a billion pieces. That's the whole idea that is opposed to love's presence. That love can be broken into billions of pieces and can never be put back together again. And so, what did that do? That engenders fear. That engenders fear. Because if we can't depend on love remaining as it is, we have no chance. In other words, if God can be destroyed or love can be destroyed, I mean, we don't have a chance. But it's impossible. It can't be destroyed. And neither can we. It's our own making. It's like going and making a movie. You go watch movie, you watch TV all the time. You watch these movies, and they create all these horror and terrible scenarios and situations. The producers and the writers, they make it up. They don't, but they make it up in many cases, not based on love, but based on hate and separation and fear. Why? That's all part of the conditioning process that we're in, reinforcing these lies and deceptions. And we sit there and we feed our mind on it. We put our children in front of it as soon as we can get them in front of it. And that's all part of the conditioning of separation that we over and over and over and over and over again, to where we lost sight of that which is real. And now we're trying to find our way back home. And somehow, some way, the desire in your heart to know the truth brought you to this moment in life where now you are engaged in this 365-day lesson in the Course in Miracles, and you're beginning to see the light. The exercises for today are to be practiced with eyes closed throughout. The mind searching period should be short, a minute at most. Do not have more than 3 practice periods with today's idea unless you find them comfortable. If you do, it will be because you really understand what they are for. The idea for today is another step in learning to let go the thoughts that you have written on the world and see the word of God, or to see love's presence in their place. Love presence has been covered up by our own writing, by our own ideas of separation. We've covered it up, we veiled it. We veil the truth. We veil what is real with that which is false. And so we need to let it go. We need to unveil it. The early stages in this exchange, which can be truly, which truly can be called salvation. When we exchange the cover up for what was originally there, that's salvation. That's simply what salvation is. That I was looking at the cover up. And the cover up has been unveiled, and now we see the truth. We see that happening in our present day. When you see things happening like what's going on in our world, in our country, they get cover up. But once the covers are pulled back, then you see what the truth is. But that's what's going on in this process of waking up, this process of these lessons, and process of undoing the way we see now so we can see correctly. We can see only love's presence. We can see only our innocence. We can see only our true nature. We can see with the consciousness and the mind of God, and not through the mind of the ego or the devil or whatever you want to call it. I'm not into names anymore. Make no difference what you call God or you call that which is opposite of it. It doesn't make no difference to me anymore because I know all of it's meaningless. I'm not into form anymore. I'm not into form or formal, okay, tradition. I'm not into that. I'm only into that which is real. Because that which is real cannot be threatened. If you're in this idea that there's going to one day be this one universal religion that we all going to finally agree on one form, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The only thing that's going to happen is the truth is going to be revealed. That's it. It's the only thing really going to happen. All this man-made structure and system that we made through the idea of that which is opposed to reality, all that's going to be fade away. This is because it's not real. All of our rituals, all our idols, all this stuff that we have built, all these systems of worship that are just part of the idea of separation don't mean a thing. They're meaningless. You stay in it long enough, you begin to see that. Absolutely meaningless. Okay, so these early steps in this exchange, which can truly be called salvation, can be quite difficult and even quite painful. To let go of the ego idea can be painful. It can be difficult, but it doesn't have to be. Some of them will lead you directly into fear. You will not be left there. You will go far beyond it. Our direction is towards perfect safety and perfect peace. When you embrace the reality of what we're introducing here, that which is real cannot be threatened. That which is unreal does not exist. You will be moving towards perfect safety and perfect peace. Therein lies the peace of God, or the peace of love's presence. With eyes closed, doing your exercises today, think of all the horrors in the world that cross your mind. And you don't have to think very long. Every day we are being bombarded with news of tragedies, destructions, uh, all kinds of, you know, happenings that results in pain and hurt and death, seemingly death. So you don't have to think very far to find some horror in the world. So with your eyes closed, think of all the horrors in the world that cross your mind. Name each one as it occurs to you, and then deny its reality. God did not create it. God did not create the storm. God did not create the hurricane. God did not create the tsunami. God did not start the war. God did not kill the people. God did not take my mama home. God did not take my daddy home. God did not came and pluck up someone out the earth because he wanted them in heaven. All these are wives' tales. All these are creations of our own. They're not real. All these traditions and wives' tales. God did this. God did not destroy the Egyptians. God did not kill the Shumamites. All these things that you read in these scriptural stories, and we attest God for doing them. He did not do that. God ain't hurt your enemy. God ain't gonna destroy your enemy. God ain't gonna get your neighbor. He doesn't do love present doesn't do that. But we have this idea that me and God over here, and we're fighting against something or someone or some organization or some idea. That's all made up. God is not in opposition to anything. Love present don't oppose anything. It only extends love. So all of this terror and horror and fear in the world, God didn't create that. Love's present didn't create that. We created that in our own minds. Why? Because we're coming from a point of view of the ego insanity of separation. Most religious communities, the basis for what they teach comes from that foundation and not the foundation of love. Thus, you have the results that we see even in those communities. Religious communities have been the source of most of the wars in the world, of most of the horror in the world. At the base of it has been the religious people trying to promote a fearful God, and that God's on our side and he's against everybody else. That's come from mankind. That has nothing to do with reality. And thus you have the world we see. So I'm not here opposing anything. I'm just here extending love's presence. I'm just using examples. Because my goal is the goal of the course, and that is love's presence. It says perfect safety, perfect peace. That's my goal. I come in peace. Peace, brother and sister. So again, eyes closed. Think of all the horror in the world that cross your mind. Name each one as it occurs to you, and then deny its reality because it is not real. Love's present did not create it, and so it is not real. Say, for example, God did not create that war, and so it is not real. These are just examples. God did not create that airplane crash, so it's not real. God did not create that disaster, that tsunami, that hurricane, that tornado. God did not create COVID or any disease or disease. God did not create cancer, and so it is not real. That's the whole idea for today's lesson. God did not create a meaningless world because it would be meaningless to think that the number one uno big boss would create such a insane world for anything or anyone to inhabit. It's an insane thought. So what we are experiencing here, my friends, my brothers and sisters, is our own creation, our own mess. You remember the story, the prodigal son living in a perfect environment, all things good, got everything he could ever want. But somehow, some way, he gets this tiny mad idea that there is something else outside of his father's kingdom, his father's domain. And so he goes to his father one day, say, "Hey, I'd like to have my inheritance." And you notice that the father never hesitated in giving the son his inheritance. Didn't question him. Why? Because love presence already know there's nothing outside of love's presence. There's nothing outside of perfection. So it would have to be an illusion. It would have to be, you would have to fall into a dream and be dreaming of separation, be dreaming of an illusion, be dreaming of, uh, uh, it would have to be in the form of a dream. It's not, we know dreams are not real. You ever walked in your bedroom of your 3-year-old daughter or son, and you notice that they're having some kind of nightmare? There's a bear or a lion, something running after them, and they're laying there dreaming. In their mind, in that moment, the lion and the tiger and the bear is real to them. They don't even know they're dreaming. You dream, you know what I mean. But the father is standing over them, or the mother, knowing that the child is what? At home, safe in their bed, secure, and there's nothing really happening. But in that child's mind, something is happening. The booger man is after me. So that is a illustration or a metaphor for what our life is like until we wake up to what is real. That we haven't left home, we aren't separated from love's presence. There is no lion, there is no bear, there is no tiger. We're just dreaming of that. And we get carried away in the dream. It's like going to the movie and you really get caught up in the movie and you get carried away in the characters in the movie as though they're real. But then at the end of the movie, what do? You get up and walk out the theater. Where what we're doing in these workbook lessons is learning to get up and walk out of the theater or the movie or the dream that we are these separated, individuated people called human that had left home like the prodigal son in search of something that's not there. And then we believe that we have successfully separated from our creator. It's like the fish out of the water. How long do you think the fish out of the water is going to live? Not very long. So how long do you think you can experience life if you have a thought system and a belief that you are separated from the source of life? You're not going to live very long. So you would have to what? Fall into a dream of separation. Only that at some point you got to wake up. So these workbook lessons are here to help us to wake up to the reality of the truth that we are not only all one, that Humpty Dumpty hasn't fallen off the wall and broken up into a billion pieces. And then we put names on each one of the pieces and call them a self, give them a social security number. And then they build this world in a system of separation where wars and fightings and disasters and we begin to see each other as different, and we put certain values on some of the names, and then we discriminate based on color and race and size, and we created all this all this insanity. And then we cry, where's God? Well, he's right there where you are, because he is who you are, waiting on you to wake up, just like the father or the mother gently goes over to the door, to the little girl that's in the bed, dreaming of separation, and gently taps on her and said, "It's okay. It's okay, my dear. You're at home. You're safe. The Father's here. I haven't gone anywhere. You haven't gone anywhere. You've been on a journey without a distance." And gently wakes up the child. Well, in these series of teachings from the Course in Miracles, that's what we're doing. Gently waking ourselves up from the idea of separation, from the idea of terror and fear, and undoing that thought system. And these first group of lessons is about undoing the way we think now so that it can be replaced with true thinking, real thinking, that I call it, and embracing your true reality as love's presence. Whatever God is, that's exactly who you are. So it's like God fell asleep and playing the game, the God game of separation, only to come back and save himself. That's what you're doing. It's like a game. Yeah, you say, well, what? That's meaningless. Yes, that's a meaningless world. And so at the final analysis of all of this, we find ourselves where we've always been, right, right in the smack middle of where we never left, and that's love. That's why you're love. I'm love. All humans are love, but all humans don't recognize that. Let me finish this. Suitable subjects for the application of today's idea also include anything you are afraid might happen to you or to anyone about whom you are concerned. All the anxiety that we experience and thoughts of fear and terror or pain and hurt, anticipating something might happen to us, having lack and brokenness and all of this that we fear, all the thoughts that we engage in of fear. As you go through this exercise today, name them. God did not create this thought of cancer, that I'm gonna get sick, I'm gonna die, or my daughter, or I'm afraid of my children, what's gonna happen to them. All these fearful thoughts that we have, these are all our own thoughts, and none of them are real. But we become preoccupied with them, and we focus on them, and we use our attention and give our attention to them, and we give our energy and our power to them. And then we end up having the experience and wonder, what happened? Is God doing this to me? Da, 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 all that rubbish. In each case, name the disaster quite specifically. So be specific about the disaster or the thought of fear, whatever it is, whatever form it may take. Remember, forms are all the same. We're teaching here. The course teaches that doesn't matter the form, they're all the same. God did not create illness, but God did not, don't be general saying God did not create illness. Be specific. God did not create cancer. Whatever thought that you deal with, whatever thought that you deal with, be specific in it when you're doing the exercise. Or God did not create heart attacks, or whatever may arouse fear in you. Whatever arouses fear in you, when you go through this exercise today, say God did not create, and be specific. It is not real, because it's not real. This is your personal repertory of horrors. You have built this repertory of horrors from the day you've been indoctrinated with fear. And you've been accumulating this, and you think about them. These thoughts pop up into your head. Not going to be enough money. I'm going to lose my health. I'm not gonna retire. I'm gonna lose my job. I'm gonna lose my wife. I'm gonna lose my house. the Democrats going to lose, or the Democrats going to win, the Republicans going to lose, or the Republicans going to win, Russia going to invade us. Any thought that comes into your mind, all these thoughts, you have built a repertoire of them, and they engender fear to you. He says, so any thought that comes through your mind when you're going through this exercise today, your personal repertoire of horror at which you are looking. These things are part of the world that you see. Some of them are shared illusions. Some of these thoughts, all of us hear the same thoughts. But there's only one mind, there's only one ego mind, and there's only one love's presence. It's just that one is real and the other one is not. So we all have access to the same ego thoughts of separation. He says, so whatever ones cross your mind during your exercises, he says, some of them we share. He said, and others are part of your own personal hell. So if you ever had a belief in hell, just know that you created the hell that you believe in, because it is not real itself. It does not matter. What God did not create can only be your own mind apart from his. When we don't embrace the mind of reality, that means that we're embracing the mind of unreality. And it engenders fear, because it is based on fear and separation. Therefore, it has no meaning. In recognition of this fact, conclude the practice period by repeating today's idea. God did not create a meaningless world. Love did not create a meaningless world. The idea for today can, of course, be applied to anything that disturbs you during the day, aside from the practice periods. Be very specific in applying it. Say, God did not create a meaningless world. He did not create wars, and so it is not real. God did not create fear. Therefore, it is not real. Love's presence, or love did not create meaninglessness. It only extends what it is. So when we're not experiencing pure love, pure presence, pure innocence, pure joy, pure happiness, that's just an indication. That's just an indication that we became afraid of love at some point and ran back into the arms of the ego thought system of fear, sin, guilt, death, separation. But we realize that, and we what? We choose again to embrace love's presence, because that's our natural inheritance. I got to go, guys. What a great lesson. Thank you so much for being with me. If you're listening to these lessons, please subscribe, like, share. Again, they are sponsored by Truly Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization. And it is our aim to share these advanced teachings, to be a part of the undoing of the belief in separation, so that we can all wake up to the light and the truth of who and what we are. Have a great day. Bye-bye.